Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hiral Dadia. Welcome to Nirmal Bang. We have with us Kiran Mazumdar Show, Executive Chairperson at Biocon, joining in. Firstly, congratulations, Kiran, for being titled the world's top entrepreneur by EY and the first Indian woman to win EY World Entrepreneur of the Year 2020. I think it's a great moment for all of us women over here as well. Uh, I mean, what's the kind of pride? I mean, all of us, and you're the third Indian as well.
Well, it was a very proud moment for me because I won it for India to begin with.
Absolutely.
As you know, there were 41 countries and, I was representing India. So it was a great moment of pride for me to win it for our country. And then, of course, I was very proud to win it for my company. And of course, I was very proud to win it for this whole area of biotechnology because I think as a pioneer in the field of biotechnology, winning the World Award was very special for me because I've always believed in science-led businesses and I've always believed in science and innovation and all that, was very important for this particular award.
I think something just went wrong with the internet, I think, Kiran, at your end.
At my end or your end?
I don't know. It was showing me internet is unstable.
No, it was at your end because
So
I was okay.
Right. So, I mean, with all of this, Kiran, the other thing is that every woman has been looking up to you as a role model. What would your suggestion be to them? Because again, you're the second woman to receive this award, I think, after Olivia Lum of High Flux from Singapore, who won the title in 2011. What would you advise all the women entrepreneurs?
I actually gave us an interview recently where I said that, look, as far as I'm concerned, it's very important for a woman to really give her full commitment to any career or any kind of entrepreneurial opportunity that she wants to pursue because it cannot be done in your spare time. It cannot be done in a way that says, okay, let me try my best. Your best is not enough. You have to give it your 100%. And you have to give it your 100% in a way that your life depends on it.
Correct.
And I just feel if women are that driven in that kind of purposeful way, I think, you can do very well, you can succeed. But very often I find women give up at the first hurdle. And that's what really lets us down.
Absolutely. I think that's something that all of us need to learn from you as well. And with this COVID-19, with the lockdown, those 60 days of house arrest, how does it feel to be back to office and work from office and not from home?
Obviously, it feels good, but obviously I want life to go back to normal because one thing is to come to work and I'm still very sort of isolated at work because I don't go to all parts of the the factory or the labs or the facilities. So I'm still very isolated and I just deal with a few people, but it would be great to really get back to normalcy because even, as you know, even socializing is now so limited. And it's a very strange world. I really think we are doing too many Zoom calls and it's great in one way because it's very efficient. But in another way, you miss being with people and you miss seeing people face to face. And I think that face-to-face engagement is a very different way of dealing with people. Because we are social animals,
Right. Right. That human touch factor is something which is completely missing right now. So tell me one thing, Kiran, how do you think will everyone perceive this kind of change? Because, I mean, all of us have been used to hugging each other when we meet or probably moving, getting into theaters, meeting socially. I mean, how will that social factor change for all of us post the lockdown in this COVID area? Do you think everyone will be able to really take it well?
See, first and foremost, I think we have to get to a level of safety where we feel much more confident and comfortable about dealing with the virus. Right now, there's fear, there is panic, and there is a huge concern around catching the infection. And I think we need to allay those fears. So the moment you start having reliable treatments and finally a vaccine, I think, you will feel far less worried and fearful of COVID-19. I personally believe that we will get there within the next few months, even before the vaccine arrives, because as we see the death rates coming down, and as we see that most patients are just getting a mild version, and those who are getting a slightly worse version are recovering quite easily, because we know now how to treat them. Remember, when COVID-19 actually, took the world by surprise and by storm, we didn't even understand what was happening and why were these deaths being caused by this virus. But I think today we are in a much better place because we understand the disease better. And therefore, we also understand the management of the disease better. And I, for one, really believe that treatment regimens that can cure the disease in a much more confident manner will happen in the next month. Because we are all developing new treatment regimens and we're feeling more comfortable about being able to handle this kind of disease.
Right. So, Kiran, what's the best way to deal with the virus according to you?
Well, obviously, going out, you have to wear masks. And obviously, if you're in a public space where you really don't know who you're dealing with, then, that physical distancing is important. I certainly believe that this hand sanitization is important. But I think the masks do protect you in a big way. So, and if you really want, there's a big debate about whether you need to wear gloves or not. But I think even if you don't wear gloves, I think the mask is very essential. And one thing I think you must appreciate is that, the Japanese, and many parts of Asia, they've been very used to wearing masks whenever there is even a flu epidemic.
Correct.
And I think that tells you that we do need to do that. So the mask does protect you. And I think all of us are trying very hard to come out with new treatments, come up with new vaccines. So all that is extremely comforting.
Right. And Kiran, how important do you think is going to be the role of biotech with regards to fighting COVID-19 right now? And maybe could be any virus from here on, at least till the time a vaccine or the treatment is out and approved?
Well, I think the biotech sector has done a lot for COVID management. To begin with, I think testing is a very essential part of keeping this disease under control. We're not testing enough, and I really think we need to test much more. And we need to do sort of surveillance testing, and it's called sero-surveillance because you can use serological tests to do this surveillance. And we're not doing enough. I think we are being too, sort of cautious, and we are trying to sort of rein in testing too much, and I think ICMR should free it up. I think we do need to do much more extensive surveillance testing. Secondly, I think anybody and everybody should be allowed to go and test themselves if they so wish. Whether they are asymptomatic or symptomatic, of course you get tested, but even if you're asymptomatic and somehow you want to test yourself just to make sure that you don't have it, I think you should be allowed to do it. I think this is a fundamental right. If I want to get tested, I should be able to do that. But today there are too many restrictions and do's and don'ts about testing, which I don't think is really a great idea. So I don't agree with the kind of testing regimens that the ICMR has brought out. I think they need to let go. They need people to take their own decisions. They need state governments to take decisions. And there's no point in burying your head in the sand by not testing enough. I think this is what is happening in most states. And I think at least for the first time, at least Delhi came out with a very honest statement saying, listen, we think it's going to surge. Now, whether it happens or not remains to be seen. But at least they have said to the people that, listen, don't be surprised if we get 5 lakh cases of COVID in Delhi. And maybe it might happen, who knows? Even though at 5 lakh cases, it is still, for a city of about 15 million, 20 million people, that's still a small number, but of infected cases. But I think we should focus on the mortality rate. And when you start seeing the mortality rates coming down, and when you start seeing the infections coming down, you will feel a lot more comfortable. So I think, it's very obvious that we have to get back to economic activity. And the sooner we get back to full economic activity, the better. But then there's a catch-22. So you need to make sure that the disease is well managed, that the mortality rates are down, and that the infection rates also come down. So you need to manage it well. I mean, Karnataka has done a great job. Kerala has done a good job. And I don't see why other states can't do the same.
Absolutely. I mean, a very well said point over here, Kiran. And, on with regards to where serological antibody testing is concerned, I think Sinjeet has been working on the same as well. Why is there a resistance, according to you, with regards to the testing right now?
See, basically, Hiral, there has been some concerns about the kind of tests that have been developed. Just to explain what the serological test is, you are supposed to basically test antibodies in your system, okay, in terms of whether, the presence of COVID-specific antibodies. And the problem is that our body does produce a lot of antibodies. And if you test the wrong antibodies and say it's positive, then they are worried that you're going to get a lot of false positives. Correct. So I think the quality of the test and the specificity of the test is very important. And I think that's why ICMR is very keen to make sure that any test that is approved will be very specific to COVID-19 so that you don't get false positives. There is also something called the Elisa Kit. So the Elisa Kit is which is a serological kit, is actually a very reliable kit, because here what you do is you start taking blood samples of lots of people. You can do it in a 96 well plate. And so you can do almost 90 tests at a time, because in those wells you will also put positive controls and negative controls. And then what you do is you compare it against the antibodies that you are seeing in your test. Now, because you're comparing it to positives and negatives, you can quickly know whether these patients are positive or negative. And that is very useful information. And that's what I mean by sero surveillance, because you can do it very fast. You can also do the same tests as a point of care test, like a pregnancy test, in a strip. And those are where, the ICMR is a bit uncomfortable, saying that unless those strips are very specific, we are not comfortable, because you could get false positives, which is not good. But I think regardless of that, if you get a false positive, you can always corroborate it with an RT-PCR test.
Correct.
So I don't think we should really, take that kind of an approach, saying that because of this, we don't want to do the test. I just think we need to ramp up testing. And then we are also not allowing private diagnostic centers to test, and you can only do symptomatic testing, and it has to be done through a doctor's prescription. We've put in too many rules and regulations as usual. And it's about time that we freed it all up.
Absolutely. I mean, a very great example over here, Kiran, is someone in my society itself who tested positive, say, 10 days ago. And few of us had a common house help. Now, we did request the municipalities over here that, we've been not in direct contact, but our house help has been in contact with this patient. So all of us need to be tested. No response.
Tested you because you were symptomatic.
Yeah. Absolutely. And they were like, no, till you don't develop symptoms, we are not really going to test you.
Yeah, so why? And even if you want to test and pay for it yourself, you should be given that right. But they don't.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And
as if it's a criminal offense, which is crazy.
Yeah, and we were just made to self-quarantine for 14 days. That's about it. Now, in those 14 days, if anyone actually develops symptoms and if it worsens, that's when they will come to test. And I think that approach is really wrong. And I think it should be the right
Yeah,
of every individual to be
I agree
allowed to
with you.
test. Absolutely.
I agree with you completely.
Right. And with this, Kiran, amongst the various approaches, if you think that are being taken for the vaccine development right now, which do you think is the most appropriate if you have to compare it in terms of the timelines of development and the probability of success?
So let me be very honest here, Hiral. I'm
Mm.
really concerned about the shortcuts that are being taken for vaccine development.
Mm-hmm.
There is a race to get the vaccine into the market, and that's very dangerous because
Correct.
there are 104 vaccine programs around the world, and of which 10 are in the clinic in human clinical trials. In India itself, there are some 14 programs, of which 4 are supposed to be getting into human clinical trials before the year end. But the worry I have is that because of this frenzied race to get the vaccine into the market, lots of shortcuts are being taken, which is very, very dangerous. For example,
Mm.
some of the vaccines have skipped the animal trials.
Okay.
Now, normally you would always try it out in primates, in monkeys, to see
Monkey.
how those monkeys are responding to the vaccines. And, when you challenge test the monkeys, that means after a few months, if you give the monkeys the virus, they should not get infected. Okay, that is the way you normally develop a vaccine. And when you find that the monkeys are not developing the virus, then you know that the vaccine is working. And then what you do is you start the human clinical trials, and then basically you start tracking the humans in terms of how long are they
Mm.
they're showing this endurance, means for how long are they protected, right? So all this work has to be done, and that's why it takes a couple of years minimum before you know that this vaccine is working. Today, let me give you an example. Everybody is very excited about the Oxford vaccine group
Mm.
and AstraZeneca making statements that this vaccine is going to come out in September. And we are also very excited because Serum Institute is going to manufacture these vaccines. But let me share with you something about the vaccine.
Mm.
This vaccine was actually inoculated into monkeys in early March, okay? And or it was maybe late February or whatever. And the monkeys, of course, developed a very good immune response, which was very good. And based on the immune response, they actually started clinical trials in April.
Mm.
Okay. Then what happened is at the end of April, that is 2 months after the monkeys had got inoculated, they had put them to a challenge test, which
Okay.
means then the monkeys were inoculated with the virus itself.
Mm.
And unfortunately, all monkeys got infected,
Okay.
which means that they were not protected against the virus, the vaccine.
Mm.
Now, it is the same vaccine that has been inoculated into the human beings, and you're hoping that the human beings will somehow miraculously be protected. Okay? Now, if you're going to base your approval just on response, your immune response, you can have an immune response to even the weakest vaccine.
Mm.
But how do you know how long you're going to be protected from the
Mm.
virus? So
Correct.
I would not take the vaccine for a long time till I know that yes, for at least 1 year I'm protected, right?
Correct.
Otherwise, if you're only protected for a few weeks, why would you go on taking a vaccine all the time? It's not safe.
Mm. Mm.
Secondly, there is also the Moderna vaccine, which is a very new vaccine, which is actually injecting the part of the viral RNA into your body, and it is actually mimicking how the virus attacks you. And you're hoping with that your body actually produces antibodies, and you're hoping that that's what will protect you. But you don't know whether if it goes out of control, what will happen,
Mm.
right? So all this requires safety, requires a lot of patience to know that you are protected and for how long. So
Mm.
safety, efficacy, and duration is so important in vaccine development that if you take shortcuts, I really worry that we are actually putting ourselves to risk.
Right. But Kiran, how is the FDA really approving of something like this? And how would they compress the stage 3 trials as well? And then think of delivering almost say 99.9% efficacy across say million
So
global
what do you mean
humans.
by efficacy? Are you only bothered about efficacy? Efficacy means I give you anything and you'll get a response,
Correct.
yeah? Even if I don't give you a perfect vaccine,
Hmm.
okay, you will still give an efficacy response. That
Okay.
is not the way to develop to assess a vaccine.
Hmm.
A
Hmm.
vaccine has to be assessed in terms of safety is very important.
Hmm.
How safe is that vaccine? See, remember, there's a lot of controversy about vaccinations themselves, right?
Hmm.
Because vaccinations you're actually giving a part of the virus or any infective organism into the body, and you want and it's supposed to be a weak dose of the infection, and your body is supposed to then produce the antibodies and protect you. That is the whole, logic and
Right. Correct.
the rationale of a vaccine,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, so what I'm saying is that safety, efficacy, and the duration of protection is very important.
Right.
I
So
want to know how long am I protected. If I'm only protected for a month, I'm not interested in that vaccine. If I'm protected for a year, yes, I'm interested in that vaccine. So, can you get the vaccine approved in less than a year? My answer normally should be no. But today, if you're going to start extrapolating data and start getting fast track approval, which is what I think people are hoping will happen, I don't know whether it's a good thing to do.
right. So what is your expectation if you have to see as to when we could see a vaccine for a commercial use available at the earliest, an optimistic base case and a
See,
worst case scenario?
what I would say is that look, if even some kind of an emergency use approval is given to the vaccine later this year, well, a lot of people can enroll in a trial saying, look, I also want to get the vaccine and I just want to be under that vaccine to provide data for the vaccine. But to get it at large scale will take at least a year.
Hmm. Right. So with
Okay.
this,
That's why I'm saying don't worry about the vaccine so much as about making sure that you bring down the infection rates and the mortality rates. And the moment you know that I can cure patients and patients don't have to die of this virus, then you'll be very confident and safe that, okay, it's nothing to worry about.
right. So even Biocon, Kiran, has got an emergency authorization for cytosol, right, for treatment of COVID. So for this, are we going to do a trial as well to build clinical evidence?
No, cytosorb is already an approved device. It's a device that actually is supposed to absorb cytokines. See, today we know that this disease causes a cytokine storm.
Mm-hmm.
And cytosorb is a medical device that actually absorbs cytokines from the blood.
Okay.
So this is always used in extreme sepsis, and therefore in America it's got approval, and therefore it's been approved automatically in India. But we have an even better drug than cytosorb. We have something called alzumab. It's an anti-CD6 antibody called itolizumab, which actually works very well in COVID patients, because it is anti-inflammatory and it downregulates
Okay.
cytokines. And this is working very well. And we have seen some really promising data, which, we've just concluded the patient enrollment. And so far, all patients who have been given the drug have recovered. So that's a very good sign. So I just feel there are many drugs and drug regimens which will actually help us to reduce the mortality rates, which will put us in a much safer place.
Right. So with this, how do you think is the approach towards vaccine development for COVID different from the other vaccines that have been
There's no
developed so
difference.
far?
There is no difference. All vaccines are developed in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
They're either live attenuated vaccines or they are, vaccines that are produced in different viral vectors. The only difference this time is the RNA vaccine, the mRNA vaccine that Moderna is developing, which, as I mentioned, has its risks as well. So I think there's no difference in the way you develop a vaccine for any influenza or for any others.
Okay. And with this, there are talks around BCG vaccinated individuals also, which are showing some superior immunity to the virus. How true could this be? And would you think this could be an interim defense against the virus. Do you think there is any
Yeah.
clinical evidence to the same?
I think that's a good question, because I think what the BCG vaccine does is, again, it produces an immune response, right?
Hmm.
And that immune response is really a very big immune response. So they feel that you're basically boosting your immunity. So basically, you're activating your immunity more than anything else. It's not that you're producing antibodies against COVID, but basically, you're just sort of, kickstarting your immune system in a very high way. So that in case you catch the COVID virus, your body can fight it very easily. So that is the whole approach that the BCG vaccine is taking, because it basically boosts your immune system, and that's one approach is to say that if it boosts your immune system, then the likelihood of you getting and contracting a very severe form of COVID is reduced. That's the feeling.
Mhm. Right. And with this, what's the sense that you have with regards to herd immunity, Kiran? I mean, what's the kind of potential cost it could be in terms of losing lives? Because I was hearing Dr. Devi Shetty talk as well a couple of days ago, where he was indicating that if herd immunity needs to kick in, around 70 to 80% of the country that needs to be infected, and then we have to be prepared for 1%. I mean, we have to be ready to give up 1% of the population. I mean, is this exactly what it needs to be like?
Not really. I would slightly disagree with that. I would agree that yes, a large number of people need to be infected,
Mm.
and a large number of people have to recover fast and build that herd immunity, which actually, if you look at today's numbers, you have, just about 200,000 people in India, over 200, about 250,000 people who are infected. And I think you're already seeing that a large number of people, if you deduct the 7,500 people who have died,
Mm.
the rest of them, it's almost half and half. So half of them have recovered and half have basically, are still active cases. Now, that's a good sign, because if you have 250,000 people who are going to recover and create some kind of herd immunity, the herd immunity only works if, like for instance, a large number of these people actually come from Mumbai. If you
Mm.
think about it, even the infection rates, out of the 250,000, 100,000 are from Maharashtra, and I think almost like 50, 60,000 people are from Mumbai itself. So out of that 50, 60,000, if they're all concentrated in certain areas, like say Dharavi, and if you find that 30, 40% of Dharavi are now recovered, then that creates herd immunity.
Okay.
Okay. So I think it's important for us to track the active and recovered cases, because I think it does start creating herd immunity in those hot spots.
Right.
Where these numbers come.
Correct.
And that does help. So I don't think the whole country needs to have herd immunity, but at least in those hot spots, if you can start getting herd immunity, it starts bringing down the infection rates.
Right. And Kiran, there's a question coming in saying that, how can we use Ayurveda and homeopathy? Do you think these are streams that can be used to treat COVID? And why is the world only going there?
Ayurveda and homeopathy can both boost immunity. And if you are willing to use BCG to boost immunity, why not use anything else that boosts immunity also?
Correct. And with this, Kiran, overall, yes, this has been a healthcare a pandemic with regards to the health of everyone. But the quantum of impact it's had on the economy as well is huge right now. I mean, the last 70 days, I think whoever I've spoken to, the only thing I've heard is that in terms of we even we don't care whether we make profits or not, we don't want to make a loss. But what's the sense, do you think what we've done as a country with regards to where the stimulus package goes, with the way the lockdowns have been opened up, we are in the right path with regards to reviving the economy from here on?
So, just like we've gone through or going through a health emergency, we are going through an economic emergency. And this economic emergency does need to be treated just like you treat the health emergency. You cannot just address one part of the emergency and not the other part. And I think what the stimulus package has done is it has addressed a few parts of our economy, but not the entire economy. So whilst they've done a great job of addressing supply, liquidity, MSMEs, agriculture. They have not addressed the demand side. They have not addressed the large sector, the large industrial sector. They have not addressed the sectors that are really challenged because of COVID-19. And so when you don't do that and only address parts of the system, how do you cure the entire patient, right? That's the point. Today, if I just look at some parts of the disease and only address that, the patient is not going to get well soon, right? So you need to basically holistically look at the economy. Why is it that you are not looking at creating demand? Why are you not looking at mechanisms that create demand? For instance, we do know that today you need to create demand, and it's like a good virtuous cycle. The moment uh, you know economic activity and manufacturing activity and service activity comes back, you start creating jobs, right? And the moment those jobs are created, you put money in the hands of the people, and then they will start spending. But right now, let's face it, most of these manufacturing jobs in MSMEs depend a lot on large industry, because many of them are ancillary industries to the large industry. If you only tell the ancillary industries we are going to support you, and you don't create any kind of incentive or motivation to the large industry to revive or recover, then how are you helping the MSMEs? They can't do anything with the stimulus package you're giving them, because they need business, they need contracts, they need to make products themselves, right? And that has to come from the large industry. Now, the large industry also wants some stimulus. They want either lower interest rates, they want easy loans, whatever it is. But you're not doing that. You're saying, no, you're big enough to look after yourselves, but it's not happening. So it's a vicious cycle.
Correct.
Secondly, we've talked about GST rationalization even before COVID, right? Isn't this the time to do GST rationalization and incentivize demand?
Absolutely.
Right? So these are simple things we should be doing. But I don't know why the government is not looking at all this, because they should. Because otherwise it's going to be a catch-22 saying, oh, we've done everything, we've helped this, we've helped that, but still the economy is not doing what it is supposed to do. Housing is also a big challenge. There's so much of inventory in terms of low-cost housing, mid-cost housing, high-cost housing. Nobody is buying, right? So, I was on one of the panel discussions where one of the panelists said, why don't you basically, incentivize house buying or home buying by saying that, look, we will exempt you from the first year's interest. If you buy a home before 31st March 2021, that will create, it's not that people don't have money, but that will release the money into the system.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's what I mean by saying that you need to look at each sector. Like, you've seen now that the aviation sector is also challenged. The hospitality sector is challenged. They all need to come back. And remember, their cost of operations is going up significantly, because now you have to do all this sanitization, temperature profiling, masks. Even now, maybe they will start testing you. All those, and then the air hostesses and all of them have to wear those protective clothes. So the cost is very high, right? And then people don't want to spend an arm and a leg to fly.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And so how are you going to make flying not expensive? And there again, fuel surcharge can be done away with in aviation fuel. You need to look at all these things. Even the hotels, why can't you just bring them down to a very low GST level?
Correct.
Things like that.
Right. I mean, I think every individual sector needs to be micromanaged.
And especially the sectors that are challenged.
Yeah.
For instance, our sector doesn't need too many, concessions. But our sector can also benefit from some incentives, because we have an opportunity to grow.
Correct.
We have an opportunity to really now start building a very large pharmaceutical sector, because now the world needs us. right? Whether it's vaccines or pharmaceuticals, it's a very big opportunity for India. But then it's capex heavy, so you need to give some incentives for investment. You need to basically also make it worth their while in terms of, if you could give all these tax concessions to the IT sector to make it what it is today, why can't you give the same kind of SOPs to the healthcare and health science sector?
Correct.
Then on one side, you also want startups because they are also very important for our economy and for the new economy. You need to incentivize them. So nobody has thought all this through, you know.
Right. So, Kiran, do you think, especially on the pharma front as well, uh, we have been actually importers with regards to the API side of business in the pharma space? There were probably a couple of years ago, we were not really importers ourselves. We were self-sufficient. Do you think?
No, we are still very big exporters of APIs, but we also import APIs, you're right. And many of those APIs are something which we can make in this country.
Correct. So do you think we could become self-sufficient the same way if the industry is incentivized well?
Well, under the Atmanirbhar Bharat program, they should incentivize this sector because we can become very self-sufficient.
Right. And overall, with regards to the industry, especially if you have to look at Biocon as well, what has been the impact in terms of business and industry? And do you think FY21 as a year we will be able to match the previous years, or there will be some bit of a slowdown, or because of what's happening on the pandemic side, there would be an uptick?
Well, Biocon could have grown much faster. We will still grow, but we won't grow as much as we thought we could because we have had an impact in the first quarter of this fiscal. So we haven't been able to, perform at 100% capacity. We have had to take some hits because of remote working and because of all the restrictions that came into being. So it has impacted us, and it will impact us for the rest of the year because the moment you get impacted for the first quarter, it does have a rolling effect. And we believe that we could have grown much more than what we can now deliver for this year, and it will impact us in that way.
Right. And when do you expect normalcy to return?
So we think normalcy can return from the second or maximum third quarter.
Right. And Kiran, there's a question pouring in as to how confident are you that an Indian pharma company will be able to make a vaccine?
You have to believe in ourselves. I think the biggest problem we have in our country is we have this colonial hangover. Anything that is done in the West is sacrosanct and we believe in it so implicitly, even if it's bad. I mean, let me give you an example. Everybody's going crazy about remdesivir. When we see the data and we know it's not working that well, why are we so hung up on remdesivir? Right? We have some of these drugs of our own, but nobody believes in it as much as they believe in foreign drugs. And I think we need to believe in our own capabilities. So I think when you talk about can we develop our own vaccine, of course we can. But we have to believe in our strengths and our capabilities, and our regulatory support has to be given so that we can also compete fairly with the rest of the world. The problem is we are always kind of handcuffed and made to compete with everybody else in the world.
Absolutely. I think that self-belief is something which is really important. So lastly, Kiran, your last words that you would want to give on this show to all the viewers right now?
Well, I just think I always believe that every crisis throws up opportunities. India has actually been extremely resourceful, extremely innovative, and it's actually unleashed very new potentials that we had never thought of before. And I think this is the time for India to reinvent itself as a much more confident, robust, and innovative economy than we were in the past. So I, for one, believe very strongly in the power of technology. I think, we must use digital technologies in every which way possible, whether it is in the financial sector, whether it is in the industry sector, whether it is in the research and science sector, and whether it is in the regulatory sector. I think the digital platforms can give us huge regulatory reforms if we want to really use it. Because I, for one, believe that you can create very abbreviated regulatory pathways. You can do away with quite a lot of the regulations. You can make it far more transparent being on a digital platform. You can do parallel processing instead of sequential processing, which happens in regulatory pathways. And you can create virtual single windows, you know. So there's a lot that can be done. In fact, in Karnataka, our industries minister, Mr. Jagdish Shettar, actually came up with a great proposal. He said, listen, why do we need regulations at all? Let's just make it an open platform, self-governance, and make sure that those who are not abiding by and compliant with law pays a very hefty price. I think that's a very good suggestion.
Correct.
Let's see how we can implement it, but certainly food for thought.
Absolutely. And I think from here on, all of us need to learn to take care of ourselves as well, instead of relying on the government or anyone else to take care of ourselves, and be really responsible citizens to get out of all of this. But thank you, Kiran. It was a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for sparing your time. And congratulations once again, because all of us women, in fact, all of us people who, I mean, all of us, at least from our age, all look up to you really well with regards to the kind of achievements that you've had so far. But thank you so much for joining us on the show at Nirmal Bang.
Thank you so much. Thank you.